It's beyond the cars. It's beyond all the success. It's actually the people behind it.
I started the business, but I was so paranoid for the first 6 months after losing that money that I started in her name.
Yeah.
And every time I got paid, I would go to the check cashing. He hinted at some stuff, but they still would, here's mad, so on and so on.
You're amazing. I've done a lot of interviews, just, a little feedback. You're a great interviewer too.
Never lose that magic, Jeff.
What it is, Jeff J. Cunningham. I have a very special guest for you today. Literally one of my favorite human beings, his heart. And one of the words he said is, man, I always want to help out people when they remind me of me when I was younger. And not only that, he's just one of the best guys to know. Aside from a business, his life story you're going to hear is amazing on what he's overcome to be where he's at now. It's beyond the cars. It's beyond all the success. It's actually the people behind it. That doesn't mean anything to me. It's always the person and the people around and the person we're around. Well, I'll let him do an introduction. Peter, how you doing today, sir?
Man, amazing.
Very good. So give a quick intro, really quick, about you and who you are and what you do.
I've been an entrepreneur probably the last 18 years. I've been hustling probably the last 40 years. I raised 3 kids, put them through college, got them off on their own. I have a granddaughter who has my heart. She owns me. And I just love business. I love helping people. I love learning. I love teaching. A wise man once told me, learn from other people's mistakes because you're never going to make enough mistakes in your own life to learn from your own. So
yeah, no, that's big. And so it's funny, me being Jeff the entrepreneur and branding and documenting, everybody always calls me a hustler. I always hated it, right? I'm like, no, a hustler. But like, you owned it. What was the first hustle you had to do back in the day when you were like, still, you said 40 years hustling?
So we can go back. I started 9th grade, but then I dropped out of high school after I started my 10th grade. And school wasn't for me. So I dropped out.
Sounds like a lot of other successful entrepreneurs, Elon Musk, a lot of these guys.
I had to start fending for myself. It's typical broken home, parents get divorced, living in different places. I lived with my aunt, with my grandparents, spent some time with my dad's, some time with my mom, but pretty much from the age of, 13, 14, I'm on my own.
See, that reminds me. So I used to teach behavioral middle school kids, right? And so many middle school kids came from broken homes. They were 13. They thought they couldn't amount to anything. The biggest common denominator, even in this world, was that they had a mom and dad that nobody loved them, right? That they didn't feel loved, right? So you at 13, obviously broken home. And you said, very typical. I'm very blessed. I had a mom and dad, that were my mom passed away young to breast cancer. But when you were in that position, what then made you start to fend for yourself and what was the whole point?
I think you learn more the more you're challenged, right? So me being challenged as a young child, that's pushing me to learn more, right? So it's not so much, obviously there's different stories, people that come from broken homes, people that don't, but I think the bigger the challenge is how do you react to it? So for me, everything was a challenge. I'll tell you a story. As I got older, I was probably, 17, 18, I sang out and I ran around the hood. And
where was the hood?
Daly City.
Daisy City, where in California?
Yeah, in California.
Wow.
And at that time, I was staying at my dad's house, who lived in the city, San Francisco.
Yeah.
Probably about a 4 or 5 mile run. And I would stay out all night, partying, hanging out with the homies. And I got to a point where there's no more buses. So the only way I could get home was I would actually jog down the middle of the street all the way to where my dad's house was, so to make sure that I wouldn't get jumped from people, that I was entering other people's territories, for lack of a better word. So I, being smart about it, I'd make sure I'm in the middle of the street so I could see someone. If somebody comes up to me, I could react to it. But I would literally jog down the middle of the street, 3 o'clock in the morning, just to get home.
Wow. Yeah, it reminds me of my dad. My dad used to always, where we grew up or where he grew up, he would be like, they call me White Lightning because I had to book away. If not, you got jumped. So
you got to fend for yourself. It's I don't know if you watched that video that Brady does that people talk about where his successes come from.
With Tom Brady?
Yeah.
Yeah, Tom Brady's
failures.
video.
It's the failures. It's when you're pushed into a corner, how do you react to it, right?
So
Improvise.
what was the first corner? Like, what was the toughest thing in life that you had to overcome? Or, I mean, there were a few things. I know your history.
There's a bunch of them. I think for me, probably the hardest thing that I had to overcome. I mean, there was just different phases of my life where I was tested. For example, at some point I figured I had to get a job.
Yeah.
So I applied at a bunch of different jobs. I ended up getting 2 jobs. So the first job I had started at 7 a.m, finished at 4. And then I got a job at TGI Friday as a busboy.
Okay, yeah,
It was like a 30-minute drive between jobs. And that would go from 7, maybe 8, 2 o'clock in the morning.
Yeah.
And probably a week into that, I was driving to, I had a Monte Carlo. I was driving to work to TGI Friday and I fell asleep. And just come off the freeway, just slammed into like 3 cars.
Well, I've done the same exact thing. So you work 7 to 4. What was the 7 to 4 job you worked?
Warehouse.
Warehouse.
Yeah.
Packing out stuff?
It was they manufactured like party favors, wax.
Yeah.
We'd pour wax, so it was some hard labor.
Yeah,
If you
so
ever poured wax,
very similar. After my mom passed away and my dad, I worked at a Home Depot packing out molding, like 4 a.m. to that. And then I worked at a restaurant at night and I would fall asleep.
I fell asleep and then I crashed. And then my mom came and got me and she says, "You quit one of the jobs," and I literally slept for like 2 days.
Wow.
Because then I would go out, right? If I had free time, I wouldn't take a nap, but I go hang out with friends. I'm young, right? So
how old were you then?
that was probably, I was probably 17, 18 maybe.
Oh, wow. And working that many, working that much.
I just met my first wife, I think, right after that. So it was around the 17, 18 range.
Yeah. All right. And then so this happens. You're like, man. So your mind always stayed busy. You always had to be work. 2 jobs were like the thing, right? And then so what? Then okay. So now you meet your first way. You meet the girl. So
we already had met. So we dated in high school.
Okay.
And then we re-met again. And just to, I tell people this story because I just think it shows. It's kind of the what my life was back then. I had a cousin that I spent a lot of time with. Lived with him part of the time. We were with each other, 5 days a week, 7 days a week. And when I met her, we hooked up for the second time. We dated, and we just started spending a lot of time together. And I remember, I'll never forget, I told my cousin, I said, "You know what? I think this is the one. It's time for me to settle down." And I'm 18.
Are you 18? What's your definition of hook up? Is it like hook up or is it like
No, we were, talking, not having, not
all
sexual.
Right, well, I'm just saying, because mine as a homeschool kid was always hooking up was like kissing or like hanging out.
I mean,
so that's why
I meant it was more of a serious type relationship.
Gotcha,
you knew this was going to be serious.
Yeah.
But here I am, 17, going on 18. I'm talking about settling down because I've already done everything. I've already ran the streets. I've already dated women. I've already partied. I've already been to clubs. I did all that. I was going to clubs at 17.
Yeah, because you had to grow up like at 13 kind of.
Yeah, I became a man when I was 14.
Yeah, that's crazy. So then you're like, I'm settling down. She's okay.
I thought that was, I said it was time. I'm done with party life. I'm done with chasing girls. I'm done with doing all that stuff. And, obviously I didn't know what was to come because, make a long story short, we were kids having kids. By the time I was 23, I had 3 kids.
Wow.
Yeah.
Wow.
2 girls and a boy.
Now, my brother just had a kid. He has another kid on the way. And I noticed him like kick up the thing. I'm 39 single here in Miami, right? No kids. So did it make, when you had kids, did that like change and thing like I got to provide more like kind of?
For me, I look at it 2 ways. So, I didn't have the best childhood growing up.
Yeah.
So people have 2 options. You can continue to follow what you've been taught, or you can take what you've been taught and say, I want to do the opposite of that. I don't want that for my kids. And that became my why, right? Everything I did was for my kids. Obviously, could I have been a better father? Absolutely. There's always ways, especially when I listen to Patrick David talk, right?
Yeah.
He always tells you his stories. But they were my why, right? Everything I did, I started getting, I think my first real job, I delivered bread for Bodine Bakery.
Okay. So
and I would get up at 3 o'clock in the morning. I had my daughter in 86. I was already working. I barely made it when she came out because I was on my way to work.
Yeah.
3 o'clock in the morning to 11 o'clock in the afternoon. But being young, I wouldn't go home and sleep. I go out with the homies, hang out, just running around the streets still.
So you had like a bread route, right? Or
you deliver bread to all the retail stores.
Yeah, no, because
I was sourdough bakery, Fisherman's Wharf.
Yep.
Yeah.
I used to work at, it was a grocery store up east, Stop and Shop, and I used to talk to all the bread guys. It's so crazy because I see you now, success, the cars, everything now, right? No big deal. And it's like, man, you were like one of the guys that I was.
I mean, it was just
like anybody else. That's crazy.
It was a grind. And then, but obviously not making smart decisions back then. I wouldn't sleep.
Yeah.
Go out, you know, the girlfriend at the time was at work, kid was at the sitters, and I'd go out, maybe drink or hang out with the homies, get into things I shouldn't be doing, and next you know, it's 10 o'clock, and I got to be at work at 3 o'clock.
Yeah.
So I did that for 2 years, though.
So how old were you then?
Jabs was born in 86, so I was 20.
20. Wow.
20
oh
to,
goodness, wow.
I'd say probably 19 and a half to 21 and a half, 22, 2 years old, I was there. But I got into accidents, too.
Again, because
Two accidents.
Like car accidents?
Well, so when the bakery in San Francisco was in an area called 19th Avenue, and you got to take the streets to get there. And when you're driving at 3 o'clock in the morning, you can time all the lights. As drivers, that's what we would do. We would time the lights, so when they turn green, we'd go.
I know how that is.
So we're cruising at one speed, timing it, and out of nowhere, when I got to the interstate, this car just came and hit the side of the truck, and the car went flying and rolled over like 3 times. Luckily, the guy got out and he was fine.
Wow.
So didn't get fired for it because I don't think it was my fault because it was green when I proceeded. I just timed it like perfect. So if he's trying to beat a light,
right,
he's gonna hit me.
So man, wow. So working hard, working at that, you getting so many. That's crazy. So literally through this journey, at what point did you realize money was important or whatever? Where that was at? So
I was at the bakery for 2 years, and then through a cousin of mine, so let me back up a little bit. I originally thought I wanted to go in the Air Force, right? Because my girlfriend at the time actually got pregnant before we had our first child. Okay. And that she obviously miscarried that. But I knew life had to be serious now. It's time for me to get serious. So my first goal was to get into the Air Force, but only the Air Force. Didn't want Marines, didn't want Navy, didn't want Army, just preference. Yep. And for reasons we won't talk about today, but I didn't get in the Air Force. So as I was leaving the facility where all the recruits were, they were trying to recruit me because I scored very high on my scores. And they were like, come on, you can go to Army or Marines. I said, nah, Air Force or nothing. So I left that, and that's when I then got into the bread company. And then 2 years later, I got an opportunity to work in a computer company. And I thought I wanted to be an engineer, a tech. That's what I thought I wanted to do. But the only opening they had was a warehouse manager. I said, well, you know, this is my end. And I remember it like it was yesterday. It was $18,200 a year. That was the salary. Wow. It was more than I was making as a bread driver, which was still good money back then. So
what year was that?
This was 86, probably 88.
Okay, yeah, wow, because that's like
ago, yeah.
Make that in a month now or a week.
Yeah. So I did that, and then I got the warehouse in order probably in 2 months. Done. You know what they need, what they wanted done in a year, I got done in 2 months. So I started hanging around the sales guys just because they were in the warehouse. Their office was next to the warehouse. Yep. And they were like, hey, you want to make cold calls? You want to do this? That was like the gopher, right? So yeah, fuck it. I'll make cold calls. Yeah. So I started making cold calls. And I started doing training for cold calls. Started setting appointments. Did that for about 6 months.
Did they give you a script when you cold call, or do you just get tossed?
Well, they started with the script, and then there was these courses they had that you could take. Oh, okay, I did all those. There was a binder to follow. And then eventually the company moved closer to where I lived, and it got to a point where I was there probably 6 years, went from about 18 to about 60 a year. Oh, wow. And the company was literally right down the street from where I lived, but I was comfortable, right? I can do whatever I want. I can come and go as I please.
Right, yeah, I know. We've had those jobs.
I had a challenge because I would sit in these meetings, and I was also doing purchasing. I was doing selling, both. But I would do selling to other vendors. So I was selling through other buyers, and I wasn't selling to actual like B2B. But I would sit in these sales meetings, and our CEO would hire these, $150,000 sales guys. And when they brought out the chart and said, hey, who's making the most profit, who's making the most money, I was always at the top. Yet I was making 60 grand. These guys are making 120. So it kind of bugged me. I would tell people that story as you're talking, having conversations. And there's this lady that I used to do business with, Peggy Quinn. And I used to buy equipment from her. And I would always say, hey, this is what's going on. You know, you shoot the shit, right?
Yeah.
And one day she goes, hey, we're looking for a regional manager up in Northern California. And I go, you know, I'm good. I'm comfortable. And she goes, I'll never forget it. She goes, look, why don't you go meet with Brian, who was the VP of sales at the time. What's the worst case scenario? He'll offer you a job and you say no. That's worst case scenario. And I said, yeah, you know, that makes sense. So I went and I did it. And he offered me a job and they flew me down to meet with the big boss. And I spent about I flew back home and then I spent probably 3 weeks trying to decide because they sent me an offer letter that was less than I was making. I was already at 60. They were offering me, I think it was $3,000 a month guaranteed for 3 months. And then it became a recoverable draw. Had 3 kids, had a brand new home that we just bought. And I was like, I mean, fuck, what do I do, right? But I could never find it. I asked everybody, my cousin, my uncle, my grandparents, who I relied on a lot. You know, what do I do? And nobody would say, hey, do this, do that.
Right.
And then finally somebody, I can't remember who it was, said, look, you're still young. If it doesn't work out, you can always go back to what you're doing now.
Yeah.
So I took it and grinded that. It took about 6 months. And I was in the hole about 30 grand.
Wow, yeah, on the draw.
Yeah.
So you take the job. So that was it scary, like, to do that then? Because you have 3 kids, you're in there, and then you go and take a brand new job when you have the...
I think part of it was scary, just not knowing what to expect, especially since I was commuting almost 2 hours to where the office was. But I took the office with the agreement that they would move the office closer to my house if I took this position, which they agreed to do. But I still had to commute for 2 hours. And then what made it worse is this was a remote regional office. So it was just me and an executive suite.
Oh, wow, yeah.
They were headquartered in San Diego. So I had no support, nobody to kind of shoot shit off the wall with, none of that. So
because the other job, when you had cold call, you had, you know, the whole people.
Yeah, the whole sales team was there.
Yeah.
So I was on my own. This was my first outside region manager. So what I did is before I left I knew I was leaving. I was at my other company. I went on a road trip with the sales guys at the company I was at. Just so I could learn what they were doing. Quick, 2 weeks.
What was the best thing you learned from one of those people, like a sales tip, like that you still take?
I mean, I think the best thing is just, you know, you got to be a good listener, right? But you also got to be very persistent. And I think for me that worked because I literally did 2 days of training. The vice president that interviewed me first came in the office, bundle of paper about this big, says, the customers call me, you have any questions? I'm flying back to San Diego tonight. And he left. And it was just me and a stack of papers. And then I didn't know the office had been deserted for 6 months. So they already lost touch of all the accounts that they already had.
Wow.
So I had to start dialing. And then I'd go park in business parkways, door to door, hand out. We had like a little brochure you know, that we would hand out. And I did that for like 6 months. And I remember it was 4th of July weekend. And I'm getting ready to go up to Incline Village in Lake Tahoe for a weekend trip that I was doing like on an annual basis. So my mind was already there. And I get a call from the big boss. And he's like, hey, how's everything going? I said, it's going good. He goes, well, you know, sometimes not everybody's cut out for this. He gave me that kind of speech. But my mind was already Incline Village. So I went in one ear and went out the other. I wasn't really paying it, you know, it is what it is. And then sure enough, I came back and 2 weeks later, I slammed a big deal with Chevron. About $600K, and the rest was a
$600K deal.
$600K deal to start.
Okay.
And from that point, I never made less than 6 figures. At that point,
how long did it take you to close? Because everybody always talks about the big deals, right? High ticket sales.
6 months.
6 months it took you to work down that deal and everything, right?
I think this was 91. I think back then we used Goldmine, which was on a computer. It wasn't really advanced. I didn't have any local support. There was no SDRs, no appointment setters, none of that shit. No marketing. Right? You're just calling and you're making your introductions and you're asking, hey, what do you guys need? You know, what can I do?
How would you build trust in a time like that? Like now we have personal branding, all this stuff. People can look you up. How do you build trust? Like the speed of trust?
There was no Zoom calls, right? So you meet in person, you shake hands, have a conversation, you sit down. So they got to see you. You got to see them. You have a conversation. You just build a relationship. You go out to lunch, you know, coffee. It's some of the things that we do now, but some of the things we take for granted because of Zoom.
Yeah, that's so true, actually. You know, and it makes me think of that. I was just telling you, I had the 91-year-old lady ask me for coffee, right? And it is kind of cool. You know, I'm always chasing my own coffee shop. Like I should have. Anytime anybody asks for coffee, I'm like, I should have my own coffee shop now, right? But What? So okay. So now you would never make six figures after that. So what happened then? So then you're working for, that was for another company, right?
Correct.
And what was your title?
Regional sales manager. At the
Okay.
time.
Yeah.
So I was there for like 4 years. I did well. This is where I learned about getting the big checks and thinking that you're going to get all that money, and when you go to cash it, you only get half.
Yeah.
That was my first. That was my first experience.
I learned
with
that too.
Insane.
Yeah.
It's literally insane. I mean, I think I had one check one commission deal I closed like 20 grand.
Yeah.
So I'm going home like, yeah, I'm getting me a check for 20 grand. Maybe best case scenario, worst case scenario, 15.
Yeah.
I got the check and it was literally, I think it was 9 grand out of 20.
Yeah. And but now we know where all the tax dollars are going, right?
California,
Everything
baby.
they're
It's
exposing
worse
right now. Yeah.
It's worse now. But, I didn't have anybody teaching me about managing your money.
Yeah.
How to track your expenses, how to write things
same.
off. I was a newbie to all that stuff.
Yeah.
So then I did that for about 4 or 5 years. And then another company came knocking along to recruit me. And what I liked about them is they were local. So I had all the local support. And then they also gave me a nice big signing bonus.
So this is how you can tell how you're talented, when you get recruited often.
Yeah.
You know what I mean? When you're doing
Well, the
work
girl that recruited me, the first job, went there.
Okay.
She told them about me. I was
Gotcha.
local.
Yeah, word of mouth.
They knew what I had accomplished in that territory.
Mm-hmm.
And they gave me a big signing bonus. So I went there. I was there for like a year, but it just didn't work out. And finally, I said, I'm done working for the people. I wasn't ready to start my business yet. So I had a gentleman approach me to start we call it storage, like disk drives and tape drives. That's what the thing was back in the 90s. He wanted me to start that business for him.
Oh, okay.
So I did that for 10 years. And in parallel with that, I became manufacturer's rep. So I repped other companies to other resellers,
Yeah.
which gave me a lot of knowledge.
Yeah.
I gained a lot of knowledge doing that, flexibility, travel a lot. And then, I told you that story, and I'll tell you again. I mean,
Yeah. By the way, this is the signature origin story. You tell it so well that if you're not listening, listen up to this, because you put me there in it, and I remember. So so you're going to dinner? Tell the story.
This was probably 2007.
2007.
2004. I just moved into my dream house. 1.6 mil, I think, is what we paid for it at the time. Yeah. And, we always did a lot of dinners with the family, my kids, we'd go to dinner Fridays, Saturdays. And it was Friday night, Friday evening. I was upstairs. I forgot something, went upstairs to get it. My first wife, my kids are inside the car and they're waiting. And, our biggest client at the time calls me on my cell phone. Hey, Pete, what's going on? I say, hey, Aaron, how's it going? He goes, what did he say? He says, the bank shut down a line of credit. I didn't know what that meant.
Yeah.
I'm like, okay, so what? What's that? What's that got to do with me? And he goes, we can't make payroll. And then it hit. I said, oh. I said, well, can I get some of that equipment back that we just sent you? We just sent him like a $200,000 order. Yeah. And this is hardware that we're buying and selling. So we're actually paying for this stuff. We owe the money for that, right? We're on the take for it.
Yeah.
He said, no, the doors are shut. And I just went in, stomach took for a second. I said, oh, I got to go to dinner. I went to dinner downstairs. Didn't really say anything to my first wife. Obviously I'm not going to say anything to my kids. It's my problem.
Yeah.
Right? It's my problem to fix. And went about the day. And then, that week came and I talked with the person I was in business with. And we said, hey, we can talk to the vendors, worked out some payment plans for the money that we owed. We can get through this. We'll get it fixed. And then about 2 weeks before that happened, we had his orders on hold. So we weren't shipping anything.
Yeah.
He had to give us a check. So he sent us a check for $200,000. And then we released the order. So then I get this interesting letter in the mail that says that from his bankruptcy trustee saying that that check that he sent you is considered a preferential payment. We want that back.
Oh my God.
So at that point I said, well, I can't give it back because I'm paying off money and there's no way. So then I had to file I think it was chapter 11 that I filed.
Wow.
One of the two. I don't remember. It was so long ago.
So, and you were business partners with somebody else at this point, right?
Yeah, correct. But my name was also on the business. And since I started the division, I brought the vendors over. They were all going based on my name,
See, this is the stuff people never talk about. Like at the end of the day, like it's unbelievable. I show up on these mastermind calls, see you there, right? You own this big company, making all these sales, right? And like this, so what do you do then? So now you're.
So I filed, I went and got a bankruptcy lawyer. It wasn't a very good one at the time, but this was still new to me. This was 2007. So business was good. Kids were good. That part was going well, but this whole bankruptcy shit was new to me.
How do you find a good bankruptcy lawyer?
I just asked people in the community, hey, I think I knew a couple people in the chamber or something. Hey, who do you guys know?
Yeah, because I have one in my building, and I talked to him. I was like, "Oh man, I might need your mom." When I first moved to Miami, I didn't know what I was doing.
I mean, that's a last resort, right?
And
for me, it wasn't a last resort that I got stiffed on the first 200. It was the second 200 that they wanted back.
Yeah,
they wanted me to send them a check.
Yeah,
and I said, "You're out of your fucking mind. There's no way." Because I don't know how it works here, but in California, the way the trustees work, so the trustee is just a random like lawyer who gets assigned to your account.
Yeah.
His job is to collect up as many assets as he can. Then he pays himself first.
Okay, of course.
And then he did, so whatever's left over from his bill, then he divides up through all the other vendors, which is usually zero.
Yeah.
So went through that process, and probably a month later, after we filed and everything was probably, I think I had maybe 40 grand in my bank account left at that point in time. Because I was already making payments on the money we owed. And then came my second lesson in life. And this is where it was pretty bad, since the bankruptcy lawyer didn't tell me about this. But I'm on a business trip to Chicago.
No hotel, yeah.
And I'm getting ready to check. I think it was a Marriott. I'm getting ready to check in. And I had to use my debit card at the time. I went to check in thinking everything was cool. And they said, hey, this card's not working. I'm like, what? What's going on? I got 40 grand in the bank. So I went back, checked, I checked online. I think I called or checked online, and my balance was fucking zero.
Oh, dude, I've been there, man. I was there in Colombia.
I'm in Chicago.
Yeah.
Luckily, my flight was paid for. Trying to check into a hotel. I have 3 kids to feed. I got a $5,000 a month mortgage. Wow. And I'm at zero. And I called my first wife at the time. I don't know what we did. Somehow we got it figured out. I was able to check into the room. And I was able to have, because these were very important meetings for a big client of mine, continue down with those meetings. And then...
so at zero, you literally have zero, and you're on these meetings pitching like there's nothing.
I mean, what else are you going to do?
Yeah, exactly.
Again, you create your opportunities from failures. You don't create your opportunities from when you're winning, right?
Yeah.
And I don't want to call that a failure. I just think I didn't know at the time what I should have taken that money out.
Yeah.
And held on to it. Whether that's illegal or not, I don't know. But I didn't do it because
so
he got it.
So who took it? The trustee guy.
Trustee took it.
Yeah. Wow.
Yeah.
It's good to know here. Any lessons there? So what?
Well, usually a good bankruptcy lawyer will prepare you for it. Hey, because they want to collect any assets. Now, you can't send money to somebody else because then it becomes a preferential payment, right? Because the goal of that rule is let's say I have $1 million in my bank. I'm going to file for bankruptcy. I'm going to give you the $1 million to hold on to. That's cheating the system.
Gotcha.
That's what it's there for.
Oh, see.
What they were trying to do with me, that's not what we did. He was paying a bill that he owed.
Oh, wow.
For equipment that we already bought.
I gotcha.
So we tried to fight it. It didn't work. So then at that point, I just, I got back home and I said, I'm done dealing with this shit.
And that's when you went on your own?
Yeah, it's time to start my own business. But I was so paranoid that when I started my own business, they would put it in my oldest daughter's name, Jasmine.
Wow.
So she was part of it. Did it out of my house. I had a small office in my house. And we were packaging and shipping orders. Because when we started the business, we were selling hardware.
Okay, so like phones.
No, not phones. Computer computer systems, servers.
Oh, servers. Okay.
Storage systems. To businesses, small businesses, big businesses, everything in between. We would package it up in the office, drop it off at FedEx, and ship it.
Wow.
So we started the business, but I was so paranoid for the first 6 months after losing that money that I started in her name.
Yeah.
And every time I got paid, I would go to the check cashing place in the corner to cash check to get the cash.
Wow.
I was paranoid.
Fair, yeah.
I mean, we had to build it up, and then we went from zero, and then within a year, I think we were back up. We started closing some big deals.
Yep.
And then the rest history, and that was That was, you know, at the same time, that was 2008. So that was a housing crash.
Oh my
in California.
goodness! Yeah, right in that time. Well, most great businesses get started during a recession.
But what I did is, a lot of friends that I knew or we knew, they were getting principal reductions.
Yeah.
So I said, well, I want a principal reduction. I think I owed, it was 1.6, I think I owed $1 million on the house. I said, I want a principal reduction, you know? So we had to put in for that request with the bank, and then somebody else bought the loan. But I stopped paying my mortgage for a year.
Oh, wow.
You have to. If you don't stop paying, they're not going to react.
Okay.
Right? But what I didn't do is I didn't spend the money. I stopped paying, but I put the money aside.
Okay.
And about maybe, I think it was actually a year. I was in what is it called? I told you the story. I was in, oh man.
The Marriott?
No, in Louisiana. St. Charles. Is it St. Charles?
St. Charles? All right.
Louisiana.
Yeah, you did tell me.
I think it's where Grant Cardone's from.
Oh yeah. Where is he from? Where's Grant Cardone?
Lake Charles.
Charles,
Louisiana. I was in Lake Charles. Yeah. My daughter was already in college playing soccer. She got a scholarship to play soccer in college.
So
she had a game. No, we were just there for the weekend to watch.
Okay, yeah.
So we were there. I got a phone call from the bank and said, hey, you know, we emailed you this. Look at the offer. If you accept it, we need a cashier's check for $55,000. And they didn't give us a reduction, but what they did is say, look, we're going to take that 600 of the million and put it in a escrow account, no interest. It just sits there.
Yeah.
If you sell the house, you pay. If you don't, you don't. And then the other 400 we're going to give you 2% interest on. Perfect. Sent him the check when we got back to California, and got through that and kept the house.
Wow, that's amazing. So what was through that? That's insane. Like the mental fortitude, right, to keep going when you're at zero.
I have this conversation with people all the time. I don't. The childhood I had is what I had. I don't regret it. I think it made me the person I am today. I think it made me very strong because there's a lot that I had to deal with at a young age. Even things we're not even talked about on this podcast. We probably won't talk about on this podcast.
Right. Yeah.
But it made me the person I am. So I was able to deal. Let's say my parents stayed together and they spoiled the shit out of me, I wouldn't have been able to handle that. Probably lost my fucking mind. I'm sitting in Chicago and I'm broke. Have 3 kids, wife, a home, a mortgage, car payments, all that stuff.
And you had some pretty nice cars. I remember you showing me the picture.
Well, the picture I showed you. So life went on, and then 2014 I got separated, which began a process of going through a divorce.
Yeah.
So that was kind of a bad time. I think I mentioned to you that I think the hardest challenge for me is that my why changed. My why was always my kids and my family.
Right, yeah.
And I knew it was going to change. I don't know if I was actually prepared for it.
Yeah.
Didn't know how to deal with it because my whole life, my why was I want my kids to have a better life than I had.
Yeah, wow.
And in some cases, I probably shouldn't have spoiled them as much as I did. I was hard on all my kids.
Right, yeah.
I wanted my girls to be tough, to be able to defend themselves. I wanted my son to be mentally tough, which he is. But I was very tough on him. But Christmas was always very good at our house, right?
Yeah, dude, that's awesome. The fact that you changed,
yeah, but now I sit back and I listen to Patrick Bet-David, and I love what he did with the monetary value in his house was books.
Oh yeah,
I love that.
So when did you start reading books and getting into personal development?
I've always read books. I don't read them as frequent as I do now. I've always, because again, I didn't self-taught, right?
Yeah.
You got to figure things out on your own. You got 3 mouths to feed.
Yeah.
So my why became my kids, but my motivation became it's up to me. I got to feed them. I got to buy clothes. I got to pay school. High school, private high school was $20,000 a pop a year. I think $15,000, $20,000 a pop.
I know. It's funny. I always say I want married and have kids, and then I listen to all that. Like, man.
Yeah. I mean, it's. I wouldn't change it for the world. I mean, probably the thrill of my life. There's been a couple since then, but being in the delivery room when my kids are born, there's nothing. I mean, if I talk about it, I'll probably cry. There's nothing like it, man.
So why? Because I haven't. My brother said the same thing. You
can't. It's something in life you can't explain. It's like one of the wonderful wonders of the world, right? Yeah. Your child being delivered in a room. It's just baby comes out, baby cries, or or your son or your daughter. It's and I was a kid having kids.
Yeah.
But the feeling nonetheless is the same. It's to this day one of the best. Those 3 days were the best days of my life, being there for all three.
Yeah, that's crazy. And did you always want to have kids? Like, I mean, you were kind of young. It was just what to do.
I was having sex. Is what I was doing.
Yeah, exactly.
I wasn't thinking about having kids, but it happened. And when it happened, let's have a family. My grandparents were big mentors of mine. Mm-hmm. So they were kind of like my guiding light through a lot of the things that I went through as a kid. I could always lean on my grandparents, especially my grandfather and my grandmother as well. I always wanted to make them proud.
Yeah, what's like the biggest like value you got? Because you have such a good heart, like such a heart of service. Even like from everything that you've been through in your childhood, trying to help the kids better life, business. Even though everything happens, we're gonna go and do it again. Like where does that come from?
I think it just comes from within. I think sometimes I see myself when I was a kid, just looking for an opportunity. Yeah. Right? I see myself when I was young, and I didn't have the resume. Right? I didn't have high school diploma, which was a big thing back then. Now it doesn't even matter. Yeah. But back then I didn't. Back then college was big. It's not like if I had kids now, they wouldn't probably go to college because it's not that important today. But I didn't have that. I got tattoos when I was young. And I remember when I worked at TGI Fridays, they made me wear a long sleeve shirt so you couldn't see my tattoo. So I always had that underdog type of feeling. Yeah. So I think I just see myself a lot of times, just looking for that opportunity. All it takes is one. I was fortunate to get a couple. Yeah. But I also didn't fuck those up, right? I made sure that if I got the opportunity, I made the best of the opportunity. Especially if somebody my cousin got me the job at the computer place. Yeah. Didn't let him down. Took care of business. Yeah. May have done some partying, may have done some shit I shouldn't have been doing, but I showed up to work every day and I got what needed to get done.
So when did you cut all that out and get serious? Was it when you started a business? You're like, hey, no more partying, no more of that? Or I'd never really cut it out until I started getting sick, until I went through my divorce. Yeah. But when I started going through my divorce, it got worse, drinking. Yeah. I mean, I was drinking 6 days a week, 7 days a week. Yeah. And again, I think that was the point where it kind of just all compiled all at once, right? My kids were already older. So my kids were already, I think all my kids already had graduated college. Okay, wow. Right? I think my daughter, already had just got married, but they're still my kids, right? They need me, I'm going to be there. They call me, I'm going to be there. If they need something, call me, right? Yeah. I still have conversations with all three of my kids. I don't see them as much now because they're grown up, but I try to as much as I can. When I go to, one of the things when I met Albert, I love going to LA and spend time with my son. Oh, he's out there?
He lives in West Hollywood. Okay. And then my daughters live close to where I live. And then my granddaughter's up there as well. But I was a kid having kids. So I wasn't planning for it. It's just, this has happened and now you got to handle business, right? I think from my grandparents, it was respect, loyalty, commitment, respect your elders, those kind of things I got from my grandparents, which are important.
What was the first book you remember reading that kind of instilled values?
Oh my God, I think it was what's Ziglar?
Zig Ziglar.
Yeah. I can't remember the title. I think that was one of the first ones. Then I went to a conference. Yeah. It was like a one-day thing. Yeah. And it might have been a Ziglar or
kind of like what Danny G's doing here?
No. It was like some sales, some time management, that kind of shit.
Okay, yeah.
Yeah. And then after that, I really didn't do a lot of it just because I was in action. I was doing what I needed to do.
Yeah, you were doing it.
Living the dream.
Yeah.
I mean, I was living more than anything I could ever dream of, right? Then I get to the point where, 2014.
Yeah, how do you get over that divorce? That's the biggest thing why I don't want to get married. Because all these entrepreneurs I see, the biggest common denominator is go high, make money, get a divorce, right?
Well, no. That wasn't for me, right? My thing was just, my kids, family, hustle. And then obviously we were kids having kids. Right. We're probably two people that probably would normally not get along well. Yeah. But we had the same common goal. She was doing everything for her kids. I was doing everything for my kids. Yeah. Those kids were ours. And we did everything for our kids. We just weren't very good at a relationship. Yeah. Which I've learned now because of the amazing relationship that I'm in now with my wife now. Yeah. I mean, we're best friends.
Yeah.
And there's nothing we don't talk about together. She supports me. She lifts me up. And I'm her rock. I mean, that's how it should be. But it was tough. I mean, like I said, I drank, I partied, and I showed you that picture when I showed you the picture of the cars in my house.
Yeah.
I mean, I had the Aventador, the G-Wagon, and the Porsche Panamera in the driveway. And people would look at that and say, "Man, this guy's just living life, right?
Yeah, it's
He's
most
living the dream."
success.
Yeah, and I mean, if you count success as just money, then yeah, maybe you are success. But I wasn't happy,
Yeah.
right? I was lost, and I went through that. And then, funny story. It just, my best friend worked with me for 10 years, and then finally we had we're still best friends today. He was my best man in my wedding. Casey, shout out to Casey.
And he worked within your company?
He worked with me.
Oh, with you.
Yeah, I used to coach soccer.
Yeah.
Because my daughter played, and I coached a different team, and his daughter played on the team that I coached, and that's how we met. And he came to me one day. He worked at UPS. He said, "I want to come work for you." I said, "You sure?" And he did. And he went. He's the one that helped get all the customers as we started the business.
Wow.
Acquiring new customers, and we kind of transitioned our business model a little bit, and he helped get customers. But it just got to a point. It was probably a bad time for me of the shit I was going through. Didn't realize it at the time. Probably put a lot of pressure and stress on him that wasn't needed, and he wasn't happy. So he left. We agreed it was time, and he's doing good now. But he was the face. He was talking to all the new customers that we acquired locally. I didn't have a lot of, other than big decisions, I didn't deal with them like one-on-one. And there were a couple things. We were having a couple issues with some of our techs. So we had a couple accounts, some of our bigger accounts that were kind of iffy at the time. So I said, I need to hire somebody that can come in here and help me, go meet with these guys and talk tech, right? Because I know tech, but I'm not a tech sales guy.
I know, that's
account
what I
manager.
like about you. There was one guy that reached out to me for consulting. He was a tech trying to build a cybersecurity business. He could not do sales at all. A tech.
Well, most tech companies are started by tech people.
Yeah.
Very techy.
Yeah.
And they have to hire somebody to do sales.
Yeah.
I'm the reverse of that.
I know, which is what I liked about you. You and there was another guy who flew me out, Brian Murdoch, All World Communications. He was the sales guy, and he was able to do the techs, So those work better. Sales is the lifeline of the business.
Absolutely.
So where you're at then, so you have your company, like, did you figure out, like, when did you figure out all the money rules? Like, save away so don't lose
that's
anything.
That's just recent. I mean, so what happened is, he left. I knew I needed to find somebody, so I went on a website called Upworks.
Okay, yeah.
And I went looking for
shout
a
out to Upwork. Love that.
Yeah, I went looking for a contractor, and I just, you pick up a bunch of names.
Right, yeah.
And because this is, I'm a believer in life. Everything happens for a reason. Like us meeting.
Yeah,
probably happens for a reason.
100%.
Wait till I tell you this story. So I just picked this guy only because he was in Vegas, and I figured he's close. If I need to fly him in, it's cheaper, it's closer.
Yeah.
So I picked. His name was Paul. I picked him. He flew in. We went to visit the client. He helped me save that client. And then like 2 days later, he said, "I want to come work for you." I said, "Absolutely." So he moved from Vegas. I had a spare room in my house. He lived in the house.
Yeah.
And he was running the IT department, and he was also very good at sales. So he was doing both. And probably maybe 2-3 months in, out of nowhere, he says, "Hey, do you want to? I use a life coach. You want to talk to him?" And I'm like, "Why would he say that to me?" And I was drinking 6 days a week, partying, doing all this. I wasn't really focused on my business like I should have been.
Yeah.
And I said, I kind of thought of it. I said, "Yeah, why not?" And his name's Marcel. And we set up a Zoom call, and man, we talked for 6 hours, man. Yeah. And we knew I needed help, and we met every week for I think a year and a half, 2 years, and I mean he saved my life. He changed my life.
So yeah,
so if my best friend doesn't leave my company, now maybe things happen in other ways, but how ironic, he leaves my company. I have to meet this guy because I need him to help me solve a problem in that moment.
Right.
2 months later, he just asked me randomly, "Do you want to talk to my coach?" So he's obviously saw something in me.
Yeah.
Maybe you wear it on your sleeves. I don't know.
Yeah.
And then that changed my life.
Wow.
So we met every Wednesday for 4 hours, and literally for the first 4 months, after every session, I would have to go to sleep. I was so exhausted.
Wow, yeah.
Just letting it all out.
Yeah, because a lot of times too, especially with you or your lifestyle, some things we're not going to share here. As guys, right, men, we keep it all in, right, all
Absolutely.
the time. That's one thing I love about the Move Miami here. They do Planted Men, where it's all biblical men, right, from the church, and they all kind of almost have a point of letting it all out, right? It's like,
and that's the one thing I didn't learn when I was young, right? 'Cause
Yeah.
I grew up in the streets. I grew up in the hood. You know, you don't talk about your feelings.
exactly, yep.
Didn't have that relationship with my parents. Had it with my grandparents if I wanted to. I just didn't know how.
Right.
And then, you know, then you get into relationships, start having kids. You're not talking about feelings.
Yeah.
You got to put food on the table. You got to do this. You got to hustle. You got to grind. And it just wasn't a thing. And then this just happened.
Yeah.
And it was very overwhelming at the time. But I mean, he saved my life.
Yeah.
And I already knew my girlfriend at the time as I was going through this. So probably put her through a lot of stuff as well.
Yeah.
And
How long was that?
we met in 2014.
Okay, yeah.
Right when I was starting to go through my separation and then divorce.
Yeah. How did you meet?
We met through a mutual friend.
Yeah, that's always the best way, you know?
Yeah, but I wasn't looking. I wasn't interested. I wasn't looking.
Right, yeah.
Just one random night, we met and we already had knew each other, but we really didn't hang out. And then I think I ended up at a Warrior game. She was at a Warrior game with her friend.
Golden State Warriors?
Yeah, go to a Warrior game. They were going to a local bar, and we said, yeah, we'll go, but we really weren't going.
Right, yeah.
We went out somewhere else, and we said, you know what? Let's just go home, call it a night. I was with one of my real good friends. And we said, you know, it's on the way home. Let's just swing by there and stop there. So we just swung by and stopped there. And her and I literally talked for like 2 hours. Mm-hmm. I think I was spilling the beans of just some of my pains and things I was dealing with. Mm-hmm. And we just hit it off. And the rest
So
of it.
let me ask this question. Do you believe people care or people don't care?
Of course, people care. It just depends on the person you're talking about, right?
Yeah.
Everybody has their own degree of care, right?
Yeah.
If they know you and they're invested in you, they're going to care. Or some people just care. There are people that don't give a shit.
Yeah.
Just depends on the person.
Yeah, a lot of it's in perspective. One thing I learned studying all the courses and stuff too, and Tony Robbins talks about this, right? That he changed his whole belief and his whole movement because he believed people care, strangers care, right? And for your life that you grew up, you had a lot of things happen to you where you could easily have the belief that people don't care and be hardened, right? But like a lot of people do that, right? They grow up in the same life, same stuff, and they believe that, and then they just find people who don't care. But because now even the scenario, like even you sharing your heart to the lady, even you going out here, even you talking to your business partner, whatever you're doing, then you put out the belief that hey, these people care about my business.
Well, I mean, I think my first lesson when the guy I hired, who I didn't know that very well, he lived in my house, but it was on the opposite side of the house. Mm-hmm. We didn't hang out or anything. He said, "Do you want to talk to my life coach?"
He cares, yeah.
Obviously, he cared, and he said that because if he wouldn't have said that, I would have met him, and God knows where I'd be today.
Yeah.
So that happened. Got through that, and then lo and behold, man, COVID hits.
Oh yeah, this is actually when I kind of this is the first story I heard of you.
COVID hits, and we all know what happened in California in COVID. And I had a granddaughter that was very, we were very. Oh, my daughter was,
What part? You're upstate in California, right? What part?
Northern,
yeah.
The goal was we wanted to be protected of my granddaughter.
Yeah.
So I got the first vaccine, Moderna vaccine.
Yeah.
And when I got the second shot, literally a couple days later, I knew something was wrong with my body. And I literally went through 3-4 years of hell.
Dude, that's what JD Vance said just the other day on the thing too. Yeah, second shot.
And nobody, I got hospitalized in Scottsdale because I had a condo in Scottsdale when I lived there. I got hospitalized there for a week. They give you meds. That's it. They don't tell you what's wrong with you. Then I came back, and then last January, I was here, not here, but in California. And my wife now, she sees the signs. What happens is my sodium levels drop. Mm-hmm. And I start acting a certain way. I don't know what it looks like because I don't see it, but she get ready to go to bed. She goes, "You got 2 options. I call 911 or let me take you to the hospital." So take me to the hospital. So we went to the hospital, and as soon as I rolled up, your sodium levels are at 114 and you have pneumonia.
Oh my goodness.
And then the doctor there I knew, he hinted at some stuff, but they still would, here's meds, so on and so on.
Yeah.
And then I happened to be in Colombia where I got very sick.
Wow.
I don't remember 2 weeks when I was in Colombia. But again, everything happens for a reason. So it was April 25th of last year. And by that point, I was pale. I can show you pictures. I was pale. I'd see friends at the restaurants. They'd ask me if I was dying, literally. I was weak. I was tired. I was taking naps through the day. It's the worst. And I woke up to 25th. I don't remember it. Don't remember the week before. And she said that she saw it. She got a wheelchair. She wheeled me down the elevator, put me in an Uber because 911 takes a while there. Luckily, the hospital was up the street.
Yeah, Columbia.
And she took me to the hospital, and as soon as we pulled up, my body started going into convulsions.
Oh my goodness.
So they had to intubate me for a week. I was out of it. Tubes in my mouth. And
This is after the second vaccine.
Yeah.
Wow.
Well, I'm going to tell you what happened because when I woke up, the good thing, they have very good doctors in Colombia, and the good thing when I woke up, he told me this is what's wrong with you. You're at that point he wasn't sure what was causing it, but your body's not releasing any cortisol. So imagine going through life, being an entrepreneur, dealing with what you deal with on a day-to-day basis, and your body doesn't release any cortisol, and it fucks up your hormones and everything else.
Yeah, I'm not a I don't know what cortisone is.
Anytime, so the way it works is you have a pituitary gland.
Okay.
Anytime your body has any type of stress, it sends a signal into your adrenal gland, releases cortisol.
Okay.
So.
Oh, wow.
Yeah, exactly.
Wow.
Exactly. So my body was basically dying. It's slowly dying inside.
Oh my goodness.
So he told me, they put me on a bunch of meds. I got a picture when when I got out of the hospital, but I woke up.
Oh, you showed me once when I first met you after the thing. You showed me the hospital.
I was 160 pounds.
Wow.
And
so you could have died.
they didn't know I was going to wake up.
Yeah.
They didn't know because what happens when your certain levels get so low, you can go into a coma.
Oh my goodness.
I mean, normal is I think is 140. Yeah. I think when I got there, I was probably 113. This was like the third time that it happened too.
Wow.
So, but obviously here, the doctors don't want to tell you what's wrong with you. They want to give you meds.
Yeah.
So he told me this is what's happening. We don't know why. But I woke up on a what did I wake up on? A Sunday. I think that was a Thursday, Friday. I think I woke up like on a Wednesday, Thursday. Didn't know where I was at. Didn't remember shit. Didn't even know I was in Colombia. Missed 2 payrolls that I had to do because I do the payroll.
Yeah.
At least I approve it. I woke up. I felt okay when I woke up because obviously they had me on prednisone now. And spent the weekend in the hospital. I got out Friday and went to the Airbnb. We stayed the weekend there and rested. And then Monday I just started grinding. I just felt like I had a new lease on life. That's when I met Albert.
Oh. How do you meet Albert? Albert Prieto.
Instagram. He was doing a live.
Yeah.
And it just...
lives work, man. I got to do more lives for coaches. They can change lives. And Wes Watson actually was the one who motivated Albert to start his coaching program after an interview. And then Albert messaged me to join his program. I was like, well, Albert, like it's Driven Family. I got to join it. Yeah. And if I didn't join that and Wes didn't motivate him, that's why it's like all... I know people get all crazy about these, consultants and coaches, but it's connections,
man.
It's a network.
I mean, my motivation changed. Obviously now I knew what was wrong with me. I knew we could fix it. I knew I was going to be healthy. I already had stopped drinking, 2 years past before this happened, right? This COVID, it wasn't a lot going on. And I already spent 2 years with my life coach. And we still talk. We don't talk as much,
right?
But we'll talk once a month, once every 2 months, just to do a check-in. And that was an investment. I mean, that was $500 a session. But it's worth it.
Yeah.
So then I got on. I think I was in the hospital and I still came across Albert. And then I went on Monday. I think we connected. He was doing a live, and I don't know what he said. Put this, put that. I did, and then we talked, and he called me. We chatted, and then I said, hey, I'm not going back. This was probably the end of April, beginning of May. I'm going to be in Colombia until end of May. So I'll probably be there. I can go to your mastermind in July. And then I just started grinding and working. I said, well, I got to get home. I don't want to be here anymore. I want to get back to fucking work. And I'll never forget, I took the flight. And when you fly Copa to San Francisco, you go to Panama, they literally drop you off on one side of the airport, and you got to walk to the other side. I almost couldn't make it. I was ready to ask for the cart because I was out of breath, carrying my backpack, and I was just still weak. But I made it home, and then I hit up Albert and said, you know what, I'll be there in, I went early June instead.
Well, what is it about me? How we got attracted? What attracted you?
I think we met during one of those Thursday meetings.
Yeah,
we started talking before
yeah.
Albert came on to talk.
Yeah,
But since that day, it's been 100 miles per hour.
yeah,
Met Albert, did that mastermind. Obviously met you, met a bunch of other people, some new connections. Business is thriving now. I made a commitment in December to bring in an IT manager. I brought a couple guys back that used to work for me, came back.
yeah,
And now I'm strictly focused on sales.
yeah.
Portion of it, they focus on the support side of it. And then, my manager and I meet like once a week to go over, if there's big problems to fix, let's fix them and focus on systems and processes.
Yeah, no, you
both sides.
made some huge power moves. HMI saw
Albert
it
was
there.
a big part of that, though.
Yeah.
Albert,
Yeah.
to this day, I was just down there 2 weeks. He motivates me.
Yep,
And then
same thing with
watching
me
your
too,
your
yeah.
stuff motivates me.
Yeah.
I tell you, I have a routine right now. So I get up at 5 in the morning.
Yeah.
I stretch,
Okay.
do 100 push-ups.
Yeah.
Usually I do 2 to 4 sets of 25 or 4 sets of 30, sometimes 40. My breath work, which I got from Gary
Brecka. Yeah. Gary Brecka's the man. Yeah.
Give gratitude, right?
Yeah.
Then I read. But when I'm doing all that stretching, I listen to somebody's podcast, whether it's PBD,
Yeah.
whether it's you, whether it's Daniel G,
Yeah.
whether it's Albert, whether it's Gary Brecka. I'm listening to something. I rarely watch TV. If I watch TV, it's at night when I'm sitting at home, I'm going to bed, and I'm talking with the wife. We'll watch a show or a movie.
Yeah.
And then when I work out, I do weights in the afternoon at 3 or 4. When I do weights, podcast.
And so that brings me to the last thing. So these final 5 questions here. What's the best book you have read or podcast that you like to listen to? Mine's the PBD podcast. I like that one. That's too much.
The best, there's a couple books. 2 of my favorites are Unreasonable Hospitality.
Oh, great book.
Love that book.
Phenomenal book.
And Principles.
Prince of Radio.
I love that book. Those are probably the 2 of the ones that have impacted me the most.
What stood out about Principles to you?
Just when he gets into the part about your conscious and your subconscious.
Yep. Yeah.
That part.
Yeah.
Big time.
Yeah, no, it's
Big time.
It's key. So for somebody else maybe just starting, because this is the Make More Money podcast. We have a lot of people listening. What's the best money tip? You've been through obviously at the lowest of the point. What's the best money tip you have?
Today, it's so easy to make money today.
Yeah.
I look back what I did in the 90s, in the 2000s, what I had to do. Today,
Just turn on. Story shout
decide
out.
what you want to do first, but everything entitles sales. So make sure you're getting sales training. You have sales skills.
Yep.
Because no matter what you're doing, you're selling yourself on a daily basis.
Yeah.
Most important thing. And then just figure out what you want to do in life and just do it.
Yeah. No, that's what I did, man. That's why I came down here. Was this curious
Stay
thing I had to
committed.
do. Yep.
I tell my kids this. I tell my sons all the time. Keep your eye on the prize. That's one of my famous sayings. Keep your eye on the prize.
And best relationship advice, whether business or personal.
That's a tough one. Best relationship advice. Best business advice.
Yeah, that's probably bigger because I do a lot of joint venture businesses.
Yeah, relationship I probably got from my life coach. Just what he taught me in dealing with my relationship, and now how well my relationship is with my wife now. But business, you can't go wrong with PBD.
Yeah.
I watch his podcast religiously every day. He didn't have any last week because he was in Brazil.
Yeah. Oh, that's where he was, Brazil?
Yeah, there was a couple missing.
I'm always working. I always watch it at night. I was watching it late at night in the morning.
And then Albert, his driven events, he brings in some amazing speakers.
Yeah.
Just love it. And there's knowledge. There's
so what the best relationship advice you've taken away then? Like communication, like what's the thing that for me it's core values. Like our core values in line. Like God's a big part of my life, right? So that's kind of I've doubled down on that, because you always kind of talk about God a lot. I see you always all the time in there, you know.
Faith.
Yeah. So how has faith played into a part of your life?
It's with me every day. We pray before we go to sleep. When I do my gratitude, I thank God. I've prayed since I was a kid. Now I don't do a long prayer.
Yeah.
I just give thanks. I remember I used to go to church with my grandmother a lot. But yeah, it's just you have to have something that you look up to, and for me, it's faith.
Yeah.
Although I believe everything happens for a reason as well, and God has a plan. Our plan's already written. just
Yeah,
live it
I
out.
believe the Lord put it that we meet, like certain people the Lord's put in my life this even journey. Like I heard from him to start this business. I was just at a conference the other day. A guy was trying to disprove Jesus a little bit, and he branded himself and ran ads for himself. So it made me run ads more. It was for lost people, and it made me feel like I wasn't doing enough for that. All right, so let me ask this: what's something you're looking forward to?
Today, now, life.
Yeah, future.
I've, business is good. I got probably a couple more years in this business and then see what's next. But, I've been married for 2 years now. I got a great relationship with my wife. My business is good. My daily routine is amazing. I'm committed. I'm focused, and I just learn knowledge every day. Whether it's podcasts in the morning, podcasts during lunch, podcasts when I'm working out in the gym. It's just it's a good time to be alive, and of course, we know who won the president.
Yeah, I know it's so good,
next
so
4
good
years
there,
are
man.
big.
I publicly adore.
And again, people can like what they want. I just think for business perspective, I think the next 4 years are probably the biggest opportunity everybody's going to have to do what you want to do.
Yeah.
And not, obviously, if you do the right thing and you make the right moves, the money will come.
Yeah.
But be happy, right? Find your happiness. And if you want to be in a relationship, be patient, because relationships, they come to you when you're ready.
Yeah. That's good for me to know. All right. Where can people find more of you then?
At Pete Prieto is my Instagram. Pete Prieto on LinkedIn, or our business in datastore.com on the internet.
All right. And that is our Pete. Peter, thank you so much, man.